Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive. Today we're going to be talking about something pretty intense.
Yeah, this one's going to be a thinker.
We're looking at this article called The Master's Tools and the Therapist's House, Decolonizing Mental Health Care.
Catchy title.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it's by Jaime Hoerricks, PhD.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because, Hoerricks is autistic and a Gestalt Language Processor.
GLP.
Yeah, so they have kind of a unique perspective when it comes to therapy.
And that perspective is, well, not exactly the typical therapy is awesome,
Yeah, not the usual rah-rah.
Yeah, Hoerricks actually had a really tough time with therapy.
Yeah.
They talk about how it felt almost like a punishment.
More like compliance.
And support, yeah.
Yeah.
It was more about making them fit in than, actually understanding them.
And that experience really got them thinking, hold on, is Western therapy actually healing? Or is it, just another way to control people?
Whoa, okay, that's a big question right there.
Bad question.
I mean, most of us think of therapy as a good thing. So how does colonialism even fit into all this?
Yeah.
What's the connection?
Okay, so think about it this way. Colonialism was all about one culture forcing its way of life onto another culture,
Right.
often through violence.
Yeah.
And Hoerricks is arguing that Western therapy, with all its emphasis on the individual and controlling your thoughts and behaviors, it kind of has that same vibe,
Oh, interesting.
It's trying to fit everyone into this one tiny box.
Instead of celebrating all the different ways of being in the world.
Right.
Okay, so you're saying there's a parallel between colonizers imposing their culture on indigenous populations and therapy trying to impose a certain way of thinking and behaving on individuals.
Yeah, exactly. Like Western therapy, it can dismiss all those diverse ways of experiencing and communicating with the world.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it. But before we get too deep into that, can we back up a sec?
Sure.
You mentioned earlier that Hoerricks is a Gestalt Language Processor.
Yeah.
Can you explain what that is? Because I got to be honest, I have no idea.
Yeah, so it's basically a different way of communicating.
Yeah.
It's not like the typical way we think about language, saying things in a straight line, one sentence after another.
Like subject, verb, object.
Right, exactly. But with GLP, it's more like using just a word or a phrase.
Okay.
But that word or phrase can hold a whole ton of meaning.
So it's like every word is like a super dense package of information.
That's a great way to put it. Imagine a single word evoking a whole scene, a feeling, a memory all at once.
Wow.
And here's the thing. Hoerricks talks about how their communication style was constantly misunderstood in therapy.
Oh, no.
Even pathologized.
Like there was something wrong with them.
Right. And it's because therapy is so focused on verbal communication and not on other ways of expressing yourself.
Like you're not being heard or understood.
Exactly.
Even though that's what therapy is supposed to be all about, right?
Yeah, right.
That's heartbreaking.
And this actually led Hoerricks to critique some of the more popular types of therapy out there, like CBT.
Oh, CBT.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Yeah, have you heard of it?
I have.
Okay, so Hoerricks argues that CBT, while it can be really helpful for some people, sometimes it can actually gaslight people.
Gaslight.
Yeah, making them believe that they're the problem.
Like their thoughts are wrong. Or
Exactly. You just need to think differently.
You just need to be more positive.
Right. And it's ignoring all the real problems in their life.
Ooh, yeah. I could see how that would be a problem.
Right. And Hoerricks is saying that this is built into some therapies, this idea that you just need to change your thinking.
Without acknowledging that maybe the world is messed up too.
Exactly.
So instead of addressing those root causes of suffering, it's just slapping a Band-Aid on it.
That's a great way to put it.
And telling people to think differently.
And this is where Hoerricks' argument gets really interesting.
Okay, I'm ready.
They actually suggest that we should go back to indigenous healing traditions. Yeah. They see those traditions as a totally different way of approaching healing.
Which makes sense because indigenous cultures, they often emphasize a holistic approach to well-being.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
It's not just about your mind, it's about your body, your spirit, your connection to community.
It's about balance and harmony,
Yeah,
not just fixing the individual.
Okay, I'm totally with you so far.
Good.
But I'm curious, how does this all connect back to the idea of decolonizing mental health?
Well, one really powerful example that Hoerricks uses is the history of hysteria.
Hysteria.
Yeah, you remember that.
Yeah.
How that diagnosis was used to control women.
Yeah, they were just too emotional.
Exactly.
And their experiences were dismissed.
And it's a perfect example of how harmful language can stick around in mental health.
Yeah.
Language
Yeah.
that comes from those colonial roots.
Right.
Like certain groups can be labeled as sick.
Just because they express themselves differently
Right.
than what's considered normal.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot to think about. But I think I'm getting it. So Hoerricks is basically saying that traditional therapy,
Yeah.
with its focus on individual responsibility and talking about your problems, it might not be the best fit for everyone,
Right.
especially people from marginalized communities or people who communicate differently.
Exactly.
And they actually go a step further and quote Audre Lorde,
Ooh, yes.
"The master's tools will never dismantle the master's house."
Such a good quote.
So powerful.
Yeah. How do you think that applies to therapy?
Well, if therapy is using those same tools of colonialism like control and conformity, can it really lead to liberation and healing?
That's the question.
That's a big question.
It is.
So what does Hoerricks suggest we do instead? Like, what are the solutions?
Oh, they have some ideas.
Well, okay, good, because I'm ready for some solutions.
Yeah. They definitely do. They envision like this whole new paradigm of healing.
Okay, that sounds pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's like moving beyond just talking about your problems.
Okay, so let's talk more action.
Not necessarily action, but more like acknowledging the whole person, their context, their unique way of being in the world.
So give me some specifics. What would that look like?
Well, one key thing is intersectionality.
Yeah.
Understanding how all the different parts of your identity,
Right.
like your race, your gender, your sexuality, your disability, well, all of those things.
They all intersect.
Exactly. And they impact your experiences in such a profound way.
Like being a woman of color is going to be a different experience than being a white woman.
Right. Or being a queer person with a disability.
They're all going to have different experiences.
Yeah. And Hoerricks points out that traditional therapy often just misses this.
It tries to be like one size fits all.
Exactly. And we all know that doesn't really work.
Doesn't work for clothes, doesn't work for therapy.
We're all so unique.
Yeah.
And our paths to healing are going to be unique too.
Okay, so we need to ditch the one size fits all approach.
Totally. And Hoerricks also argues that we need to move beyond verbalization.
Wait, what? So we're not talking it out anymore?
Well, not as the primary mode.
So what are we doing? Like interpretive dance?
Ha ha ha. Maybe not interpretive dance, but they suggest incorporating other forms of expression.
Like what?
Like art music movement.
So instead of putting your feelings into words, you could paint them or play them or dance them?
Exactly. It's a more holistic way of healing.
And probably more fun, too.
Right. It could resonate better with someone who's a GLP.
Yeah.
Or maybe just someone who doesn't like talking about their feelings.
There are a lot of those people.
There are.
Okay, I'm seeing how this connects to decolonizing mental health.
Good.
Western culture is so focused on words.
Right. We think if we can't explain it, it's not real.
Yeah.
But other cultures have different ways of knowing and expressing themselves.
And Hoerricks is saying we need to be open to that.
Exactly.
So instead of just changing people's thoughts, we're also paying attention to their physical sensations, their emotional experiences, their connection to their bodies.
Precisely. It's a more complete picture of well-being.
Have you ever noticed how certain smells can trigger memories?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Like the smell of cinnamon always takes me back to my grandma's kitchen.
It's powerful stuff.
Yeah, and therapy often ignores that whole sensory world.
Right.
So we need to bring it back in.
We do, and Indigenous healing traditions have a lot to teach us about this.
They do?
They often incorporate sensory experiences into their practices.
Like drumming and singing and dancing.
Yeah. Or working with herbs, or spending time in nature.
It's like we've forgotten so much ancient wisdom.
We have.
Okay, so I'm really digging this whole new paradigm.
It's pretty radical.
But do you think the big institutions are on board with this?
You mean like the American Psychological Association?
Yeah, the APA.
That's a good question, and Hoerricks actually expresses some doubt.
Really?
Yeah, they think the APA might be too stuck in its ways.
Too focused on maintaining the status quo.
Exactly.
So if they're not going to lead the change, where does Hoerricks think it's going to come from?
From the margins, from the communities and practitioners who are already doing this work.
It's often the people who are most marginalized by a system who can see how to make it better.
Yeah, they're the ones with the lived experience.
Okay, so that brings us to liberation-focused frameworks.
Yeah.
Can you break that down for me?
Imagine a therapy session where you and your therapist are like co-creators.
Okay.
You decide together what you want to work on.
You have a say in how you want to express yourself.
Yeah, whether it's through words or art or movement or something else entirely.
It's about empowering individuals to heal in their own way.
Exactly. No more trying to fit into a mold that doesn't fit.
I love that. So it's not about the therapist being the expert.
Right.
It's about the therapist helping you tap into your own inner wisdom.
Exactly.
And these liberation-focused frameworks are especially important for marginalized communities.
Yeah, the ones who have been told their ways of being are wrong.
Okay, so we've got the critique of colonialism,
Mm-hmm.
the emphasis on intersectionality, the sensory experiences,
Yeah.
the liberation-focused frameworks. It's all coming together.
It is.
It's a totally different vision of what mental health care could be.
It's a paradigm shift.
Instead of trying to fix people, it's about celebrating their unique ways of being,
And it's so aligned with Indigenous healing traditions.
which emphasize balance and connection and collective care.
Right. It's not just about the individual. It's about the whole community.
So instead of just focusing on fixing individuals, we're also looking at the bigger picture.
Yeah, the social and environmental factors that impact well-being.
This has been so eye-opening.
It has.
But before we wrap up part 2, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier.
Okay.
Silence.
Oh, yeah.
Silence in therapy.
It's a powerful thing.
In Western culture, silence is so
Oh,
awkward.
right. We always feel like we have to fill it.
But Hoerricks has a different take on it.
They do.
What do they say?
They point out that silence is often pathologized in Western therapy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like it's seen as resistance or a sign that something is wrong.
Have you ever felt pressured to keep talking in therapy?
Oh, yeah, totally. Like if you're not talking, you're not doing it right.
Exactly. But sometimes you just need a moment
Right.
to process or just to be.
And Hoerricks is saying that silence can actually be a space for deep reflection.
And healing and connection.
Yeah, it's a different kind of communication.
Like beyond words.
Jesus.
So in his new paradigm, silence would be embraced,
It would be a valuable tool.
not a problem to be fixed.
Right.
This is also thought-provoking.
It is.
But I think we need to take a little break here
Yeah, let's pause for a moment
and come back for part 3, where we'll wrap up our deep dive.
and talk about some key takeaways for our listeners.
Okay, so we're back. And my brain is like, whoa, after all that.
It's a lot to process, right? Like
Yeah.
we went from Hoerricks' own experience with therapy
Right.
to this big critique of the whole system.
Yeah, and then this whole new vision for healing.
A new paradigm.
Yeah, a paradigm shift. So in this last part, I want to bring it back to you, the listener.
Yeah, like what does this all mean for your life?
Right, why should you care about decolonizing mental health?
It can sound kind of abstract,
Yeah, totally.
but I think Hoerricks makes a really important point.
What's that?
The current mental health system, it's just not working for everyone.
It's like if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Exactly. And therapy might be the right tool for some people,
Mm-hmm.
but it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all solution.
So who is it failing?
Well, people of color, for one,
Mm-hmm.
LGBTQIA+, folks neurodivergent people,
Mm-hmm.
people from low-income backgrounds.
Yeah.
They're often failed by a system that just doesn't get it.
Doesn't understand their experiences.
Right.
So it's like trying to navigate a world that wasn't built for you.
Exactly.
So this call for decolonization, it's about recognizing that harm
Yeah.
and trying to create something better, something more just,
Something that actually honors diversity.
yeah, like Hoerricks talks about how therapy often puts the responsibility on the individual.
Right, like you need to change your thoughts and behaviors.
But what if those thoughts and behaviors are actually a totally normal response
Yeah.
to a system that's messed up?
Like what if the problem isn't you?
What if it's the world you're living in?
Right.
That's where those liberation-focused frameworks come in.
Yeah, empowering people to define their own well-being.
Not trying to squeeze themselves into some box that doesn't fit.
Right.
Okay, so let's say someone's listening to this
Uh-huh.
and they're like, yeah, therapy's not working for me.
Right.
What are their options?
Well, there's a whole world of possibilities out there.
Like what?
We've talked about Indigenous healing practices,
Oh.
which are more holistic, you know?
Mind, body, spirit community.
Exactly.
And what about those multimodal expressions we talked about?
Yeah, those are great.
Instead of just talking, you could express yourself through art or music or movement.
Right. It could be journaling or drumming or dance class.
There are so many options.
There are.
It's like a buffet
Uh-huh.
of healing modalities.
And you get to choose what works for you.
That's a really empowering message.
It is. You have the power to define your own healing journey
Yeah, don't be afraid to explore and ask questions.
and advocate for your needs.
If traditional therapy isn't working for you,
Or if you're just curious about other approaches.
find practitioners who resonate with you.
Yeah. Shop around, find the right fit,
Healing is a journey.
not a destination.
Be gentle with yourself. Be patient.
and trust your inner wisdom.
This has been such an amazing deep dive.
It has been.
I feel like we've really challenged ourselves to think differently about mental health.
And I hope our listeners feel empowered to do the same.
I hope so too.
Before we go, I want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay, I'm ready.
What does decolonizing mental health mean to you?
Yeah, how can you apply these ideas to your own life?
To your own journey of healing?
We've given you some tools, but ultimately you're the expert on your own experience.
You are.
So keep exploring, keep questioning.
And keep searching for those paths to healing.
That feels authentic and liberating.
Exactly.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone.